Hi everyone. Today we're going to do another zipper tumbler. I'm using a combination of Tim Holtz and Pinata alcohol inks. I will leave a list of the colors that I used. And to apply the alcohol inks to the cup, I'm using a magic eraser cut up into squares. I'm not putting them on in any pattern or a certain order. I'm just picking a color and brushing it onto the cup. I kind of discovered this method by accident a few months ago when I was working on a cup and I didn't like the way it looked. And I thought it was pretty cool, so I thought I would do it with this one. So I'm just experimenting with colors, just picking any random color, and I chose these colors because they kind of matched the decal that I was going to be using. So you can use whatever colors you want. Now I'm going to take some alcohol and a paper towel, and I'm actually going to wipe the ink off. You can use a paper towel to wipe it off. You can spray the alcohol directly onto the cup and then wipe it off. But I just thought that it had a really cool effect. The alcohol inks stain your spray paint. It'll leave stains on it, so even if you got most of the alcohol ink off, you would still be able to see some of it because it stains the spray paint. So just experiment with it and have fun with it. Try different colors, different color combinations. Obviously, this one looks like mustard and ketchup mixed together, but I was just messing around. So now I'm just going to play around. I'm going to fast forward and play around with different colors until I get it the way I want it. I ran out of Cobalt, so I switched over to Indigo. There were cracks in my spray paint because it was really cold here in Texas at the time, but I didn't mind the cracks because it kind of added to the look of this cup. So I'm just playing around. Alcohol inks are very forgiving. If you don't like something, you can wipe them off, start over, or just put another color over it. They're really fun to work with. So I think I got it the way I want it, so now it's time to move on to the next step. So I sprayed the cup with Krylon Kamar varnish, and while that's drying, I'm going to prep the zipper. So you want to make sure that you cut off all the fabric, and it can be a little tricky holding on to it because it's such a small area, but I find if I angle the scissors in towards the zipper while I'm cutting, that helps. And opening and closing the zipper as you cut also helps. This is a 7-inch zipper. I just got it from Walmart. And now I'm going to try and pull off the little strings of fabric that are left over. You want to make sure you get off all the fabric because you will be able to see it. There were some smaller pieces that I couldn't pull or cut with the scissors, so I just used my my lighter to burn them down. So it has a coat of Krylon Kamar varnish. I'm also going to be adding 2 coats of CCDIY Quick Coat, just for a little bit more added protection. I really think this alcohol ink effect is kind of cool. It gives it kind of a weathered metallic look, kind of. So now that the 2 coats of Quick Coat are dry, I'm going to be marking off the area where I'm going to be laying down my zipper. This is just a chalk marker that I got from Walmart. I like using the chalk markers sometimes because they wipe away very easily. So I'm going to use it to mark the beginning, middle, and ending points of my zipper. You can make your zipper area as small or as wide as you want. I did mine 5 inches across and 5 inches down. So I marked the beginning and the end, and then 2.5 inches to mark the center, and that gave me the center point for the bottom of my zipper. Just to make sure that it was on straight. Sometimes the zipper can get a little wonky if you don't keep an eye on it. So there I have my 2 endpoints marked off and the center point. So now I'm going to mark straight down from that center point so I know exactly where I need to lay my zipper. Make sure it's straight. I noticed after holding it up here, I saw that my bottom point was not lined up with the top one, so the chalk marker wipes off easily, and I was able to make a new one, and now everything was straight. Once I had my bottom marked off, then I was able to wipe away that top center point mark. And now I'm just going to line my zipper up with all the points and make sure that it's the bottom of it is going to lay on there straight. Once I have that all the way it's supposed to be, then I used painter's tape to tape off that area. Make sure before you put tape on this that your quick coat or clear coat sealer, whatever you're using, make sure it's completely dry before you put tape on it, because when I was pulling the tape off here in a little bit, it did start to pull up the quick coat, so I did have to do some touch-ups, and you'll see that here in just a little bit. But just make sure that everything is completely dry before you put any kind of tape or anything like that on it. So now it's all taped off. I am going to be spray painting in that area, so we need to cover the rest of the cup. And to do that, I like to sometimes use Glad Press and Seal. It doesn't have a lot of tackiness to it, but it does stick and it works perfectly to cover parts of a cup when you need to spray paint. I've used it for this quite a bit, and I've also used it to place decals. When you don't want to use a really sticky piece of transfer tape, or you don't really feel like messing with the transfer tape, the Glad Press and Seal works perfectly. Make sure it's pressed down, make sure there's nowhere where spray paint can get under it. And now it's time to spray paint. I spray painted matte white. Rust-Oleum 2X is what I use. Let it dry and then pull your tape off. Once I pulled the tape off, I did put on some new tape, and now I'm doing a very light layer of epoxy. And this glitter is called Moonbeam. It has a slightly yellowish tint to it. It's got green sparkly to it. And then let that dry. I'm going to pull the tape. And then I'm going to retape. And I'm going to put a couple of coats of the quick coat on my glitter. I love using the CCDIY quick coat, especially for glitter. It's so helpful when using glitter. I personally think that you use less epoxy when you use the quick coat, and you have less movement, or you have no movement with the quick coat. Even with the spray sealer, you could spray 3 or 4 times and you're still going to get some glitter that moves. With the quick coat, you don't have that. So now I'm just touching up those areas of the quick coat that got slightly pulled up with the tape, and I'm going to let that dry. And now it's time to attach our zipper to the cup. I will leave a link to the resin and the lamp in the description. So I just started by attaching the top of the zipper. You'll see here in a second when I move the lamp. I just started with a small section up at the top. I worked in sections. I ran my UV lamp for 90 seconds for each section. You want to make sure that you leave a gap between the top of the zipper and the top of your cup so that you can get a good seal with your zipper. And then I just ran my zipper along that that transition line right there between the alcohol and the glitter. I use that as my line to lay down my glue. Once I reached the end of that section, then I adjusted my zipper and then started on the other side. And then the last part that I do is the very bottom of the zipper. I just want to make sure that it's straight after everything else has been glued down. I want to make sure that it's still straight, and then I will glue that part down too. I'm using a silicone brush to apply a thin layer of epoxy close to the zipper. With the color of glitter that I'm using, I didn't have to do that, but if you're using a color that's darker than what you already have on there, you want to make sure that you don't get any epoxy on your zipper, or your other glitter will contaminate it. That glitter that I used is called Ghosted. It goes on white, but turns clear under epoxy, and it leaves just a very subtle sparkle and nothing high flash, just very subtle. I've used it in a couple of my other tutorials, but I've not used it in this way in those tutorials, so it's much better as an additive to your epoxy, or you can add it to dull glitters, but I've also used it this way as well. You just want to make sure that you get it on there evenly. Now I'm taping off the pull part of the zipper so that no epoxy gets on it. I want it to be able to move. So I'm taping it off. And I will let the epoxy thicken up a little bit before I take that tape off. If not, your zipper will be moving back and forth as it turns and it could get stuck. Alright, so this is the decal that I'm using. I got it on Etsy. I will leave a link for it as well. And I'm in Design Space. I'm using the triangle shape. And I'm going to size it the same size as the zipper area on my cup. So 5 across and 5 down. That area is such an odd shape compared to what we're usually used to working with when it comes to putting a decal in the cup. So I just wanted to make sure that it was going to fit in there at the size that I wanted it to be. So it was a little bit bigger than the area that I was going to be putting it in, but I didn't want to make it any smaller. I'm not sure what I was doing here. Honestly, I think my shape got a little, I don't know. But once I figured out that I didn't need to be doing that, I just highlighted and then used the slice method. And then it cut it to fit into that area perfectly. And it didn't cut that much off. I lost a little bit of the flowers, but nothing else. So now I'm going to make another triangle. I'm going to make it the same size. I'm going to change the color of it to white. And then I'm going to put my image over it. I changed it to white because that's the color of the area that I'm going to be putting it on the cup. So I just want to make sure that it's going to, it gives me an idea of how it's going to look. So here I got a new webcam and I was just showing it off. This one has autofocus. I love it. So here's the image. It's been sprayed 2 times with Krylon triple thick clear spray, and they're pretty generous coats. And now I'm just going to trim as close to the water slide as I can get. And then we're going to soak it in our water. This water was a little cooler, so it took a little bit longer. And now I'm just chit-chattering away because I got my new webcam with the autofocus, so I'm just using any excuse I can to get close-ups. So originally I was going to put the water slide on with the flower on that side, but I noticed that I had some imperfections on this side. So I'm going to flip the water slide over so that the flower part covers that. And because it's a clear water slide, I can just flip it over and it doesn't affect the image at all. Make sure you get your area wet where you're going to be putting your water slide. It just helps to be able to move it around and make any adjustments that you need. So I'm going to get it on there, I'm going to press it down, and then I'm going to slide the backing paper off. And now I can move it around to position it where I want it to be. And now I'm going to take a silicone brush and just squeegee out any moisture that's left in there. And then I'm going to pat it dry with a paper towel. I'm going to let it dry for a few hours. And then because I had glitter in my epoxy, it was a little, there were some raised spots from that glitter, so I'm just lightly sanding those down. Around the bottom of the cup and around the top of the cup, I'm using 1000 grit sandpaper because, oh, I forgot to mention that that layer of epoxy was, I believe, 25 mLs. And because there's only one layer of epoxy over the alcohol ink, I didn't want to take the risk of scratching or sanding the alcohol ink off. So I used 1000 grit sandpaper to do those areas. Very gently, very lightly sanding. And for the rest of the cup, I used a 220 grit. But again, it was just a very light, very gentle sand. Now I'm taping my zipper off again. And it's time for the last layer of epoxy. This second layer of epoxy, I believe that was also 25 mLs because I wanted to make sure that I had the water slide covered and protected really well. So this is the second coat of epoxy on the cup, but it's only the first coat of epoxy over the water slide. So I wanted to make sure that I had a good coat over it. And I am epoxying over the zipper itself. I'm just trying not to get any epoxy on that zipper pull. And sometimes epoxy will creep under the tape, so you might have to pick it off to get it to move, but it still moves. And now I'm going to add a charm. I did have to use my Cricut weeding tool to kind of pull some epoxy that had leaked under the tape, and it was affecting the zipper from moving the way I wanted it to, but I was able to break those little pieces off and it works just fine now. So now I'm cleaning the cup. I'm using my X-Acto knife to scrape off any epoxy around the top of the rim. And I have my X-Acto knife angled slightly in towards the inside of the cup so that I don't break the seal on my epoxy. And I'm trying to show you here, I just can't figure out the camera angle. Alright, there we go. So you want to angle it slightly in, not straight across, but slightly in. Just make sure you get all the epoxy off, and then go around the inside of the rim and pop off any epoxy that might be in there. And I could have fast forwarded through this part, but the most important part to the cup is making sure that it's clean, especially if it's a customer cup. You don't want to send them a dirty cup, because then they will tell everybody, and you don't want your name, you don't want to have your name associated with sending out dirty cups. So this is acetone in a paper towel, and now I'm going to clean the inside of the cup. I'm going to get the spray paint off. I know some people put Vaseline or styrofoam. I just don't think about that when I'm doing the cup. So this is this is what I have to do, because I don't think about little stuff like that. I always forget. I have Vaseline, but I forget to use it. So I'm just wiping everything down, and usually this gets off the spray paint. If I have any stubborn spots of spray paint, then I will use a magic eraser and acetone, and that works if the paper towel doesn't. And once you get it cleaned off, then you can really start to see you can start to get a better picture of if there's any epoxy on the inside of the cup. And usually you can just try and work the tip of your X-Acto knife under that epoxy and it'll pop right off. And then I just go around with my finger and feel if I feel anything left on there. I take quite a bit of time cleaning my cups. It's the most important part of doing cups, in my opinion, other than prepping them before you even start. So now I will take a little bit of acetone on my paper towel and I will clean the top of the rim. Just make sure that you don't get acetone on your epoxy. So I'm just taking the tip, the corner of it, with the tip of my finger and just running it around the top of the rim to make sure that all the spray paint's off. And then to smooth out any rough edges that I can feel running my finger over the top of the rim, then I will sand as well. And so that's how you want your cup to look, just like it looked when you bought it. So now I will take my 220 grit sandpaper and I will set my cup on top of it and just move it around and sanding, and that gives me a smooth top of the rim. And that's so I don't have to use my X-Acto knife and risk breaking the seal. Once I'm happy with all of that, then I will clean it off with alcohol. And I do wash them before they are sent out. I will use a magic eraser and Dawn dish soap in case there's any areas that I might have missed. So now the cup is done and I'm ready to add the little charm. So I know it's hard to see. You can see the ghosted in there, that very subtle sparkle. And I will be doing close-ups of the cup after the video, so hang around for just a second and you'll be able to see close-ups of it. This is a little hummingbird charm and the little hoop ring and a lobster clasp. You don't have to put a charm on your zipper if that's not your thing. I just think it's cute, and the zipper pull is a good thing to use for that. So I'm just going to take 2 pairs of pliers, one to hold the ring and one to twist it open just very slightly. I'm not pulling it straight apart, I'm twisting it. Then I'm going to put my charm and the lobster clasp on there and then close it back up. I just think it's fun to like be able to quote unquote accessorize with the decal that you have on the cup. I just think it's a fun little thing to do. And now once you have that all closed up, then you can attach it to your zipper. And there you go, the cup is done. So I hope this helped. I know the first tutorial wasn't from beginning to end, so I hoped that this one helped. And stick around for the close-ups.